Before Google Maps came, there must have been a way, I suppose it was called God once, of looking down at the earth and noting points of energy, places where something special was happening, where the mind and imagination of someone working or thinking or writing or singing or making art could offer examples of humanity as most intense and creative and questing and serious. A place where some sense of the world at its most mysterious and pure is entertained and dealt with. Anyone looking from above, then, is likely to see a particularly pointed and strong light coming from a small house and a modest studio at the very end of the Dingle Peninsula, with the view from some windows of the Blasket Islands. It is here that the artist Maria Simonds-Gooding lives and works. It is this bare landscape that her work comes from. But the landscape of her work is also the landscape of the mind itself and of the spirit. We all live in light, and around us are marks and lines. And Maria Simonds-Gooding manages to make sense of this, to intensify it, to make images of it in keener demarcations. In her art, she is offering us not only a way to see this particular landscape with its cuts and lines and divisions, with its many signs of habitation, with its textures which come not only from nature, but from history, but a way also to see a landscape that lives within the self, the marks we make on our consciousness as we think, imagine, remember, and feel, or the afterglow of our looking. Thus she works in West Kerry, and her subject is a West Kerry of the soul. When we name the virtues, it is always hard to know which is the greatest. St. Paul thought faith, hope, and charity were important. The four cardinal virtues, according to the Greeks, were prudence, justice, temperance, and courage. Of all the virtues, however, the one we hear least about, and perhaps the one we should treasure most, in my opinion, is subtlety. The work which we see here is a great example of the art of subtlety, its virtue. There is never a moment where one mark too many is made, and every mark made is both deliberate and suggestive. It is both exact and ambiguous. Knowing how little to put in and how much effect that would have is called talent, and it is rare. It cannot be taught or learned. It comes not just from the eye and hand, but from something tactful and essential and deeply rich within the self. Work done with such subtlety does, of course, delight the eye of anyone who looks at it. Because of the game being played between certainty and suggestion, between the texture of the surface and the line, the mark, the curve, or the other textures, these works require and repay a great deal of attention. A great deal of attention was paid to them in their making. And there are other virtues, too, that are not often mentioned, and one of them is suspicion. It is possible to imagine Maria Simonds-Gooding alone in her studio, never being prepared to take the easy route, constantly watching from her windows as the weather changes, the light changes, and then looking with an energizing suspicion at the work in hand, never settling for an easy solution, searching within her own layered sense of things for what will work and what will not, trying things out and then getting a sort of energy from this process of holding the hand and the eye in abeyance, and then making the cut, the mark, the line, and knowing in those seconds that it is right. When St. Paul contemplated the virtues, he came to the conclusion that the greatest of these is love, and we all know that. But St. Paul was not an artist, so he was wrong about many things, including love. Or at least wrong about love in a studio or a study or a place where art is made. Love is all very well. Yes, we all need love. But maybe another four-letter word matters more than love if you are working, and that is the word care. A number of years ago, I interviewed Maria Simonds-Gooding on tape in her house in Dunqueen. What I took from those days listening to her and then looking at her work, and what I get from looking at her work here now, is the sheer amount of care she puts into choosing her materials, making the images work because of her deep respect for the quality of the paper or the pigment, or the clay, or the textiles. Nothing is left to chance until the moment when she creates the image. And chance then has come from a fierce preparation and concentration. She sources her materials from all over the world. She tests them, she comes to know them, as a portrait painter might a subject. It is this care also which has made her such a great printmaker. Since care and subtlety belong to her art, have nourished her art as she has nourished them, it is important to observe that besides delighting the eye and making the world more mysterious and more clear, Maria Simonds-Gooding's art, her way of working, her great fruitful solitude in West Kerry, has a moral quality. It has something to teach us about taking care with everything we do, so that the world will seem richer and will yield more to our eye and our spirit. And also, once we start thinking about subtlety, how little of it there is in the public world, or even the private one, and not just in Ireland, and what a difference it would make if there was more subtlety, then we realize that this art, what we see now on these walls, remains utterance of the highest order, created by one of the most significant among us. And we should raise a glass to her on the occasion of this retrospective, because she is an artist of the highest order. To Maria.